All right, welcome. Today we are diving deep into the absolutely incredible story of the Indus Valley Civilization. We're going to go way beyond the basics to explore how these ancient people built their society, fueled a global economy, and engineered cities with a level of planning that, honestly, is just mind-blowing.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Seriously, how did a civilization over 4,000 years ago create an urban blueprint so advanced that it literally puts some of our modern cities to shame? You're going to want to stick around for this because the answer is pretty wild.
Okay, so here's the plan. First, we'll look at the people themselves and their urban society. Then, we'll see how they managed to feed all those cities. After that, we'll explore their massive trade network, and finally, we'll get into the real genius of their city planning and the unbelievable standards they had across their entire civilization.
All right, so if we want to figure out how they built these amazing cities, we've got to start with the people, right? Who exactly were the inhabitants of the Indus Valley, and what did their world actually look like?
Okay, the very first thing you need to get is this. This was a deeply urban civilization. We are not talking about some collection of random villages. We're talking about a society with a super-developed city life, all built on a powerful sense of community and, get this, a focus on public sanitation that was light years ahead of its time. Now, their social setup, it's really interesting. Yeah, they had elites like priests and merchants, but the whole thing was really powered by a buzzing urban middle class. The traders, the peasants, the laborers, they made up the vast majority. These were the folks, the engine, that made the whole civilization run.
Right, but you can't have these huge, bustling cities without a ton of food to support them. So how on earth did they feed all these people? Well, the answer is in their incredibly advanced agricultural system, which was really the bedrock of their entire society.
So their main staples, the things that fed basically everyone, were wheat and barley. But they also grew a whole bunch of other stuff, like dates, mustard, and, which is kind of cool, they also grew rice. But we only find evidence for that in very specific places, like Lothal.
But, you know, it wasn't all about just feeding people. The Indus people were true innovators. In fact, and this is huge, they were the very first people in the world to figure out how to cultivate and produce cotton. Think about that. This one thing would become a cornerstone of their entire economy. And that cotton, well, that became a huge part of an even bigger story. See, the Indus Valley wasn't some isolated place. It was a massive hub and an international trade network that stretched for thousands of miles. I mean, their trade network was just unbelievably sophisticated. They were bringing in precious materials like gold all the way from South India and that beautiful blue stone lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. And what were they sending out? High-end stuff, their famous cotton goods, agricultural products, and beautiful ivory carvings. So you might be asking, how do we actually know all this for sure? Well, we've got written records, just funnily enough, not their own. Ancient Sumerian texts from Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq, talk all about trading with this far-off land they called Meluha, and all the evidence we have points to Meluha being the Indus Valley. And the proof for this link? Oh, it's absolutely overwhelming. Archaeologists have found Indus seals in Mesopotamian cities like Ur and Susa, and Mesopotamian seals right there in Indus cities. We've even got texts talking about these middleman trading posts like Dilmun and Makan. The influence even went both ways. We see Harappans copying Mesopotamian cosmetics. So this incredible era of trade really seems to have hit its peak in those 300 years between 2200 and 1900 BC. But then something changes. After 1900 BC, the name Meluha just disappears from the Mesopotamian records. It suggests those vital trade links were cut or just faded away. It's one of the great mysteries. But you know, for all the amazing things they did, nothing, and I mean nothing, is more impressive than their cities. So let's get into the blueprint that made Harappan urban planning the stuff of legend. It really comes down to three basic but genius ideas. First, a grid layout with perfectly straight roads. That tells you these cities were designed on a drawing board before a single brick was laid. Second, they used standardized, uniform bricks, which means they had mass production and amazing logistics. And third, the real game changer, an advanced underground drainage system. I mean, who was doing that back then?
Okay, but here's the part that really blows my mind. This incredible design wasn't just for, a couple of their main cities. No, this was the standard. A common set of features you'd find in basically every single Indus city across their massive territory.
I mean, just take a look at this list. From the town planning and bricks to the citadel, the drainage, the wells, even standard weights and measures for trade. It was all stunningly uniform. Let's just quickly break down a few of these because they're amazing.
So, pretty much every single city had what's called a citadel. This was a raised, fortified part of town separate from where most people lived. The thinking is that this is where the city's administrative buildings or big religious centers were located, kind of the command center for the city.
And their control over water, it wasn't just about the drains. They built these incredible masonry wells and huge public water tanks, creating this sophisticated water supply system for everybody. It was clean, it was easy to get to, and it was just brilliantly built.
Now, if you're going to have a huge economy based on trade, what's the one thing you absolutely need? A standard system of weights and measures, used everywhere. This made sure trade was fair and that everything they built was precise. It's really the sign of a super organized society.
Heck, even their everyday pottery shows this same level of standardization. They had this wheel-made pottery, usually with this very distinct red and black design. It's so consistent, in fact, that when archaeologists find this kind of pottery, it's a dead giveaway that they've found an Indus Valley site.
So let's just recap for a second. We've got a civilization that totally mastered city planning, was way ahead of its time with sanitation, was a major player in global trade, and kept everything incredibly standardized over a huge area. Which brings us back to the biggest mystery of all. If they were so advanced, so successful, where did they all go? But that's a puzzle for another day.